She sat alone. While balloons popped, cakes were sliced, and her classmates danced to birthday songs funded by private jets and million-naira party planners. Her own birthday? Forgotten. No gift, no cake, just silence. And then the boy who always mocked her stood up and shouted, "Your dad must be a ghost. Or maybe you bought him from the market." But what no one knew was, that same night, she would do something no child had ever done. She would scan a QR code and pay a billionaire to pretend to be her father. And from that single decision, everything would change. This is the story of how a little girl turned humiliation into glory, loneliness into power, and forced the whole nation to rethink what it means to be family. The Lagos sun rose lazily over Victoria Island, painting the sky in soft gold as students filed into the vast courtyard of Eko Royal Primary School. It was the last Friday of the month, a day every student anticipated with feverish joy, birthday celebration day. On this day, pupils born in the month were honored with cakes, gift packs, dances, and photo ops posted to the school's Instagram. Wealthy parents often used the opportunity to showcase their status. Some sent bakers, others brought in clowns. The competition was unspoken, but fierce. Ireoluwa stood near the back of the line, her uniform slightly faded, her shoes patched at the soles with black adhesive. She clutched a small card she had made for herself the night before, just in case someone remembered. A tiny hope. A fragile one. The headmistress adjusted her glasses and called out the names of celebrants for October. Cheers erupted as each name was read. Chimamanda Oi. A girl in Gucci ribbons ran forward. Babatunde Akinsai. A boy whose father was a senator stepped up, flanked by bodyguards. More names followed. None were hers. Ire waited, heart pounding. Just one more name. Just one. But the final name echoed through the mic like a sentence. "That concludes our celebrants." The courtyard roared in applause. Ire didn't clap. Her hands were frozen. Her smile, plastered on by sheer will, wavered slightly. Then came the laughter. Tega, the class clown with a voice loud enough to split bricks, turned to her and said, "Maybe your birthday's in your dreams. Or maybe your dad's a ghost. Eh, Ireoluwa? Or did you buy him from Oya Oba for 200? Laughter exploded like fireworks. Even some teachers chuckled before catching themselves. Ire's cheeks burned. She forced a smile, nodding as if it were all one big joke she understood too. But when break time came and the others shared candies, biscuits, and party drinks, Ire quietly opened her lunch bag. Dry bread. No margarine. She tore it in half and stared at it before slowly chewing. It felt like cardboard in her mouth. Across the field, Tega was distributing mini cupcakes with golden frosting, announcing, "These ones are for children who have real parents." Ire didn't cry. She was used to hiding pain behind her dimples. But something inside her shifted, cracked. When the school bell rang at 2:45 p.m., she walked slowly to the gate where no driver waited, no nanny stood. Just the Lagos dust and Danfo horns. She took a Kiki Nepep back to the tiny apartment she shared with her mother in Oral. As she opened the door, the smell of burnt relaxer cream hit her. Her mother, Toon, sat with a tired smile, twisting a mannequin's wig while her hands ached from braiding all day. "Ire, welcome. Hope school was fine?" she asked, not looking up. "Yes, Mummy," Ire replied softly. No mention of her birthday. No cake. No card. Just tiredness and economy rice warming on a single burner stove. Toon didn't forget because she didn't care. She forgot because life had become a blur of survival. Every day bled into the next. Rent was due. An IPA had cut their light again. Clients were threatening to take their wigs elsewhere. Ire quietly changed her clothes, ate 2 spoonfuls of rice, and went to the corner where her drawings lived. With a blunt pencil, she drew a family. Herself, her mother, and a man. He was tall, wearing a suit, holding her hand. She stared at the man's face, unsure what to draw. Then she shaded it all in. A mystery, a silhouette. Her mind whispered, "What if I could just borrow a rich dad?" The thought startled her. She chuckled. Ridiculous, right? But then something caught her eye. A flyer tucked beneath the crack in the door. Yellow, bent at the corner. It must have slid under during the day. She picked it up. Rent a family. Discreet emotional acting services. Because everyone deserves a moment of love. Scan QR code to view available actors. She blinked. Her heart thudded as she picked up her mom's old technophone, scanned the code, and watched a sleek interface load slowly, bar by bar, over their struggling mountain data. Dozens of profiles appeared. Men, women, couples, all actors, all anonymous. Some offered short-term companionship for events, weddings, or healing rituals. It was like Uber, but for emotional appearances. She scrolled past the fake uncles, the hired sisters, until one profile made her stop. It had no photo, just a black silhouette. The username was encrypted, at O.E.A.001. And under it, Only one word. She stared, breath shallow. Something in her gut told her this wasn't just another actor. She tapped on it. A message prompt opened, and the question entered her mind fully for the first time. What if I really rented a rich dad? As the screen loaded slowly, Ire's fingers hovered. The next tap could change everything. Because behind that silhouette was not just an actor, but a man who hadn't smiled in 15 years. The wind swept gently across the top floor of Zephyr 1, a skyscraper so discreet that even Lagos top realtors didn't list it. From its vast glass panels, the entirety of Eko Atlantic shimmered beneath the twilight like a digital mirage. Inside, silence reigned. A single man sat on a leather stool near the open window, slowly polishing an antique transistor radio. His movements were careful, reverent, as if he were tending to a memory. Odogwu Etim-Ade, age 55, net worth $412 billion, Nigeria's quietest billionaire, looked nothing like the world imagined. No gold chains, no bodyguards, no flamboyance, just solitude. Intentional, icy solitude. Around him, the walls were lined with awards: Tech Innovator of the Year, Philanthropist of the Decade, Visionary Leader, Crestiverse. Frames glittered under warm lighting, but none bore family photos. No wife, no children, no smiles. Just a man and his machines. He moved toward a curved glass desk where a single device rested, a hollow tab designed by his own company. With a swipe of his palm, the screen blinked to life, displaying data streams, virtual maps, and encrypted stock trackers. Then, a notification blinked in the corner. Incoming message. Sender: Miss Ire8. Hi sir, please pretend to be my dad. 1 weekend only. I will pay you my whole piggy bank. Odogwu paused. At first, he almost ignored it. Probably spam. But something in the tone caught him. It wasn't typed in desperation. It was typed in certainty, with the unapologetic clarity only a child can possess. He tapped to expand the message thread. I know you don't know me, but I need you to come to my school. Everyone laughs at me because I don't have a dad. I just want them to stop. I'm not asking for real love. Just one day. Just one lie. Beneath that, a selfie was attached. A girl with big eyes, faded uniform, and a smile that looked like it had been sewn over pain. He leaned back, expression unreadable. The billionaire who had ignored thousands of investor emails was now staring at a message from an 8-year-old. He tapped reply. Terms? There was a pause. Then came her response. Just one rule. Look at me like you chose me. His fingers hovered over the screen. The words echoed inside him like a forgotten lullaby. Like you chose me. He turned his face slightly, looking past the screen into the night. The waves of the Atlantic crashed faintly in the distance. He hadn't chosen anyone in years. Hadn't even allowed himself to feel. Not since the death of Mushin, his younger sister. The only person who ever saw through his genius and his armor. Lost in the Ikeja cantonment bomb blast when she was just 10. Since then, he buried himself in work. In algorithms. In money. He built the virtual world to escape the real one. And yet, here was this girl, breaking through it with a single sentence. He stood and walked to a side compartment. It opened automatically, revealing a cylindrical chamber with blinking blue lights. Inside stood a humanoid assistant. Sleek, metallic, and life-sized. Alpha 9, he said softly. Fetch Miss Ire8. Give her the VIP code. No names. No photos. No questions. Just, bring her here. The assistant's eyes glowed in acknowledgement before it retracted into standby. Odogwu turned to the window again. He sipped lukewarm zobo from a custom glass. He didn't know why he said yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe pity. Maybe, just maybe, it was the first time in years someone didn't want his money. Didn't want his company shares. Didn't want a contract. Just wanted him, even if it was all pretend. Across his desk, a 3D hologram of his empire hovered silently. Skyscrapers he owned, satellites he funded, startups he bankrolled from the shadows. Yet none of them had ever made him feel needed. Tonight, that changed. As the assistant's hovercraft left the rooftop silently to fetch the girl, Odogwu remained still. He didn't know her voice. He didn't know her real name. But somehow, the man who had created Nigeria's most advanced digital city, he had just agreed to become a stranger's father. Not forever. Just for a weekend. And somehow, that terrified him more than any boardroom ever had. The Kiki had barely turned into her street when Ireoluwa's world changed forever. A matte black electric vehicle, sleek, silent, and strange, pulled up beside her. Its headlights blinked twice like it was acknowledging her presence. No driver. No logo. Just a single phrase written in gold along its side. Isin rear ki e pay loju oko. A good ride does not delay on the journey. Ire squinted. The door hissed open. Inside, the car was lined with white leather seats and ambient lights that glowed soft green. A robotic voice welcomed her, in Yoruba. Ikabo, Ireoluwa. Irin aho yi yu kooni ohun too ki ira. Welcome, Ireoluwa. This journey will teach you what money cannot buy. She hesitated, then stepped in. The car moved without a sound, slicing through the evening traffic like it wasn't even there. No one on the road seemed to notice it, almost as if the vehicle, and she, existed in a different Lagos altogether. 27 minutes later, the skyline shifted. Glass Heights emerged from the mist like a digital cathedral. It wasn't listed on any maps. No guards at the gate, just a light scanner embedded in the ground and vertical panels that shimmered like waves. A building not for the rich, but for the unreachable. The elevator door opened before she could touch anything. She stepped in, feeling her sandals echo against the marble floor. The elevator didn't have buttons, just a screen that scanned her face and whispered. Identity, temporary daughter. Access granted. She reached the top floor in silence. The door slid open into a penthouse wrapped entirely in glass. The ocean shimmered on one side. Eko Atlantic's skyline gleamed on the other. A piano sat quietly in the corner, and standing beside a bonsai tree, dressed in plain blue Ankara, not silk, not Versace, was the man from the silhouette. Odogwu Etim-Ade turned around slowly. His face held no smile, but his eyes studied her like she was something rare, something familiar. You're taller than I expected, he said, folding his arms. You're older than your profile, she replied without blinking. He smiled. Barely. A twitch. But it was there. He gestured for her to sit at a minimalist dining table already set with amala, gibidri, and chilled sobo. Not champagne. Not sushi. Just food. They ate in silence for a moment. She reached for her spoon with her left hand, then changed to the right, out of habit. He noticed. He finally asked, "What would you do if I really became your dad?" She didn't blink. "I'd let you braid my hair," she said, "and laugh without checking your phone." The room went quiet. Odogwu swallowed something. Not food. Something deeper. No child had spoken to him like that since Mushin. Most adults didn't dare. But this girl, this tiny, resilient human, had cut straight into the hollow inside him. He stood up. "Come," he said. She followed him through a corridor lined with interactive screens. One wall showed a 3D map of Lagos, another, stock charts from 18 countries. At the end of the corridor, he opened a door. Inside was a dressing room. It was filled with new clothes, carefully curated children's fashion, not too flashy, but dignified. At the corner, a vanity mirror with soft lights and afro-textured hair products. She gasped. "All this is for one weekend?" she asked. "I don't pretend halfway," he said. A stylist, one of his AI bots, entered silently and began to help her into a navy blue dress. Odogwu waited in the hallway, pacing. Something about this girl made him want to pause the world and sit in the discomfort he had spent years avoiding. An hour later, she stepped out. He looked up, and stopped. Gone was the girl in worn uniform and shy shoes. Standing before him was a girl who looked chosen, like she had always belonged in this world. He nodded once. "We have work to do," he said. He handed her a printed script, simple sentences rehearsing what to say when asked how they met, what he does for a living, where they spend time together. But Ire set the paper down. "I don't want to learn a lie. I just want to walk beside someone who isn't ashamed of me." He stared at her. That night, on the rooftop, they had dinner beneath the stars. No cameras, no drama, just jollof rice, fried plantain, and two unlikely souls orbiting the same wound. As they watched the lights of Lagos flicker below them, Odogwu looked at her and whispered, perhaps to himself, "Your smile reminds me of someone I failed." Ire turned slowly, her eyes catching the soft tremble in his fingers. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to, because in that moment, both of them understood something unspoken. They weren't pretending. Not anymore. Monday arrived like it always did in Lagos, hot, noisy, and impatient. But this Monday, something extraordinary sliced through the ordinary chaos outside Eko Royal Primary School. A deep, humming silence preceded it. Then, the arrival. A limited edition, matte black electric vehicle rolled past the gate. Its glass windows shimmered like water. The school's security guard stood dumbfounded, stepping aside without being asked. No one told him to open the gate, but he did, almost by instinct. Inside the vehicle, Ireoluwa sat still, her fingers wrapped gently around Odogwu's. She wore a dark green dress, elegant but age-appropriate. Her braids shimmered with gold clips, and a simple smile rested on her face. She looked composed, but her heart raced. Today was not pretend. Today was transformation. Odogwu, beside her, wore a loose-fitting casual agbada. The color? Indigo. Soft but commanding. He had removed the rings, the watches. Today, he was not the tech overlord of Lagos. He was simply Dad. The car came to a halt, Slowly, the doors opened with a gentle hiss. Children stopped mid-jump. A football rolled unattended. One of the prefects dropped his pen. As Odogwu stepped out, holding Ire's hand, the murmur began. Who is that man? Is that a celebrity? Is he a king? The headmistress herself, Madame Etim-Ade, rushed out in a full eero and buba, sweating profusely. Her eyes darted between Odogwu and the car. She recognized the vehicle. The government had once tried to purchase one like it, but it wasn't on sale to public officials. Good morning, sir, she said, curtsying instinctively. Odogwu nodded, calm. Good morning, madam. I'm here to walk my daughter in. The word daughter landed like a rock dropped in still water. Madame Etim-Ade blinked. Oh, of course, please, this way. Ire stood straighter, suddenly taller in the crowd. Her classmates, who just last week called her names and mocked her tattered shoes, now stood in silence. Even Tega, the relentless tormentor, was frozen. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Ire met his eyes. Then, the smile. Calm, subtle, regal. Odogwu walked her to the assembly area, hand still holding hers, presence towering above the school's chaos like a statue. Teachers parted like waves. Some students started whispering. Is she a princess? Maybe she's adopted by royalty. Her dress looks imported. During assembly, Madame Etim-Ade changed the script without warning. Before we begin today's hymns, a special welcome to our star pupil, Ireoluwa Etim-Ade, and her father. Applause, hesitant at first, then thunderous. A camera from the school's social media team appeared, snapping rapid photos as Odogwu gave a dignified nod and placed a small hand on Ire's shoulder. Her smile didn't waver. She'd practiced it in the mirror, just enough joy to look grateful, just enough calm to look unbothered. By break time, her story had evolved 100 times. I heard her dad is Dangote's cousin. No, he owns something bigger than Mountain. Someone said he built half of Eko Atlantic. Classmates who never spoke to her before brought extra drinks. Some opened their lunchboxes beside her uninvited. Desks were rearranged. One girl offered to carry her books for the rest of the week. Tega? Silent. He hadn't moved from his seat since assembly ended. His ego, once loud, had crumbled without a single word from her. Then came Juba. Juba wasn't loud like Tega. She wasn't cruel. She was the quiet one who watched everything, absorbed it, and stored it for the right moment. She approached slowly, sipping from a ribena she didn't offer to share. I know who you are, she said. Ire turned to her, still composed. Excuse me, Juba smirked. That man's not your real dad. I know your street. I know your mother. I know your life. Silence. The crowd around them stopped chewing, stopped blinking. Ire's heart thudded, but her face didn't crack. She bent forward and whispered, then maybe you should ask yourself why he chose me anyway. Juba blinked, and for a moment, Ire saw it. Doubt, jealousy, maybe even envy. But as the bell rang and students returned to class, a strange notification buzzed on the school's tablet system, sent anonymously. Student ID, Ireoluwa tune. Parent information not found in National Registry. Someone was digging, and the mask she wore might not last much longer. The mansion was still asleep, but the sun was already creeping across the sprawling balcony when Ireoluwa stepped into the dining room of Glass Heights. A bowl of custard steamed gently before her, placed perfectly at the center of a glass table longer than her mother's entire apartment. Odogwu sat across from her, reading something on a translucent screen that hovered in midair. He wore a soft ash-colored kaftan. No jewelry, no shoes, just presence. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was polite, like two strangers rehearsing the rules of intimacy. Ire stirred her custard slowly before glancing up. Were you ever a real dad? She asked softly. Odogwu didn't flinch, but the screen before him blinked off. He leaned back, exhaled once, and looked out the window as if the clouds might answer for him. No, he said eventually. Not by blood. Not by paperwork. She waited. I've paid school fees for over 300 orphans, he added. Funded their exams. Built schools for them in places where there were none. Did you ever visit them? He looked at her now. No. Why not? A long silence. Because I didn't want to be someone they lost. Ire said nothing, but her spoon paused midair. At school that day, the walls buzzed with whispers again. But this time, not adoration, speculation. Juba had ignited something. She stood confidently by the water dispenser, surrounded by a few skeptical minds, saying loud enough for others to overhear. He's not her dad. I bet he's from one of those acting AI companies. You know, the ones rich people use for fake family appearances. The word spread like wildfire. By second break, the rumor had grown legs. He's not even real. I saw someone like him in a commercial. Tega said he looked up the name Odogwu Etim-Ade. No social records. No LinkedIn. Nothing. Even Google no sabi am. Tega, desperate to reclaim his status, took on the role of unofficial investigator. He cornered a tech-savvy senior and begged for help tracking Odogwu's digital footprint. The result? Nothing. No personal history. No verified socials. Just public business statements and encrypted corporate filings. Too clean, the senior whispered, almost deliberate. Meanwhile, Ire sat in class, eyes fixed on the board, hands clenched beneath the desk. The fame that once lifted her like wings now weighed on her like cement. Every smile felt forced. Every compliment, hollow. She didn't even know who she was pretending to be anymore. That evening, Odogwu surprised her. "Dress casually," he said. "We're going somewhere." They rode silently in the back seat of his vehicle until it arrived at a private digital art exhibit in Ikoyi. The gallery was empty, booked exclusively for them. Inside, projections of light, sound, and memories danced on every surface. Moving portraits floated mid-air, faces morphing, expressions changing. Art that breathed. At the center was a piece titled Lagoon of Absence, an abstract loop of a young girl standing on a beach, facing the ocean. The waves crashed around her, but she never turned. "That's you," Ire whispered. Odogwu turned to her. "No, that's someone you remind me of." He inhaled deeply, letting the lights flicker across his face. "My sister, Mushin. She died in the Lagos bomb blasts in 2002. We were kids, playing. Then, chaos. We ran. She slipped. I reached back, but..." His voice cracked, "Just once. I became this," he gestured around the gallery, "to forget her. But you, somehow, brought her back." Ire stared at the projection. The girl didn't look exactly like her, but the eyes, the defiance, the loneliness in her back. It was all too familiar. Back at the mansion that night, Ire couldn't sleep. She wandered down the silent corridor, barefoot, hugging a pillow. Something tugged at her. The door to Odogwu's study was ajar. For the first time, she stepped in. It was a room unlike the rest. Not glass, not chrome, just wood, warm and old. There was a record player, a book of Yoruba poems, a chessboard frozen mid-game, and then, a flicker, a small holographic portrait hovered above a side desk. Ire moved closer. The girl in the projection was maybe 10. Braided hair, round cheeks, bright smile. But it wasn't just the smile. It was the left dimple, the raised brow, the chin. She looked exactly like her. Ire reached out to touch the portrait, her hand trembling. As her fingers brushed the light, the image shimmered and reshaped. For a second, it almost looked like her own face. And suddenly, she wasn't sure if this was all just acting anymore. The next morning, Ire waited for Odogwu in the sunroom, the soft hum of the mansion's automated lighting filling the silence. She had barely slept. The portrait from the study haunted her, not because it scared her, but because it made her feel seen, and unseen at the same time. When Odogwu finally walked in, he was dressed down in a soft linen shirt and loose joggers. For the first time, he looked less like a tech tycoon and more like someone who had just woken from a memory. She didn't waste time. "Who is the girl in the hologram?" He paused. No avoidance, no dismissal, just quiet acceptance. "Mushin," he said. "My sister. She was 10. I was 13. He moved toward the window and looked out over the Atlantic like he always did when he didn't know how to hold something emotional in his hands. "She died in the Ikeja bomb blasts. One moment we were playing, the next, people were running, screaming, falling. The sky turned red, and I lost her hand in the crowd. I looked back, and she was gone. I've never forgiven myself." Ire didn't speak. She knew that sometimes silence was the kindest language. She was the only person who ever made me feel small in the right way. She asked questions no one else dared, teased me until I stopped pretending to be older than I was. "You remind me of her. It's not just the smile. It's the way you sit in a room like it belongs to you." He turned now, eyes vulnerable. "But that scares me. You scare me, Ire, because you're making me soft again. And I've spent my entire life building walls against softness." Her voice was steady. "Then let someone in before the walls become your grave." The words landed hard. Odogwu blinked, then nodded, slowly. Later that day, the gates to Glass Heights opened for someone they had never been programmed to receive, Tune. She arrived in her best Euro and Hala, clutching a small handbag she'd borrowed from a neighbor. Her expression mixed suspicion and awe as she stepped into the floating elevator. Ire met her halfway up the penthouse stairs and ran into her arms. Odogwu stood at the top, hands in his pockets, waiting like a king unsure how to greet a queen from a different empire. Tune looked at him carefully. She didn't bow, didn't gush. She simply said, "Good evening, sir." "Please," he said. "Just Odogwu." They sat in the sunroom over fresh fruit juice and jollof rice. Their conversation was awkward at first, two worlds trying to pronounce each other. But slowly, Tune found rhythm in her voice. "Lagos doesn't forgive single mothers," she said. "Every day, I fear someone will harm her, trick her, or dismiss her. I taught her to speak up even when she's trembling. Because in this city, trembling children go unnoticed. Odogwu listened. No interruptions. No corrections. He simply nodded. That night, after she left, he sat at his workstation. For years, his Crestiverse avatar had existed in sterile perfection. Black suit, no badge, no family, just the emblem of his tech empire. Now, he opened the interface. A menu appeared. Edit profile add tag. He hesitated only for a moment before clicking. Family, +1. And for the first time, his avatar wore a badge, not for achievement, not for prestige, but for love. The next morning, something unexpected arrived. No knock, no alert, just a package, placed neatly on the marble floor outside the main entrance. Ire picked it up, a brown box, unbranded, light in her arms. She brought it to the dining area where Odogwu was finishing his morning tea. They opened it together. Inside was a doll. A near-perfect replica of Ire. The same braids. The same dress she wore to school 2 days ago. Even the dimples. Taped to the doll's chest was a card, handwritten in red ink. "She's not yours." Silence fell like thunder. Odogwu's expression hardened instantly. He took the doll gently, his hands steady but tense. Ire stared at it, then at him, unsure what to say. He walked to a drawer and placed the doll inside, locking it with a quiet click. She whispered, "Do you know who sent it?" He didn't answer, but in his eyes, something old returned. Not fear, a vow. That night, Odogwu sat alone in the study, the portrait of Mushin flickering beside him. He wasn't just protecting Ire anymore, he was preparing for something. Because someone had just challenged his right to care. And Odogwu Etim-Ade did not lose battles, especially not those of the heart. Ire didn't wear her school uniform that morning. She sat on the edge of the penthouse sofa, feet swinging above the marble floor, waiting for Odogwu to come downstairs. When he did, dressed in a navy blue tunic and leather sandals, he raised an eyebrow. "No school?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not today. I want to show you something." He hesitated. His schedule was as tight as oxygen in a sealed jar, but something in her tone told him not to say no. They didn't take the electric convoy. They took a plain sedan from his older fleet. No tinted windows, no escort. Just them, the driver, and the slow morning bustle of Lagos. Their destination? Yaba Public Park, a patch of green wedged between the market and a bus terminal. It was chaotic, loud, and unfiltered. No drone cameras, no glass walls, just the real Lagos. Ire jumped out barefoot and ran toward a group of kids building a lopsided sandcastle near a broken swing. She dropped to her knees, giggling as she molded wet sand between her fingers. She didn't care about her dress or dust on her legs. Odogwu stood at a distance at first, watching. She waved him over. He walked slowly, careful not to step on scattered plastic bottles and sweet wrappers. He lowered himself onto a wooden bench beside a man pushing a wheelbarrow. The man looked up and nodded. "Morning, sir." "Morning," Odogwu replied, unsure how to start a conversation without titles or business cards. The man introduced himself. "Name's Shedrick. That's my boy over there, with the missing front teeth. Calls himself King of Sand." Odogwu smiled, genuinely. "Your son seems happy." "Happy is cheap here, sir. You just need sand, sun, and someone who won't hit you when you laugh too loud." That sentence lodged itself in Odogwu's chest like a pebble underfoot. They talked. Shedrick told him about his life as a Danfo driver. The long nights, the broken gears, the fear of Lasma, the moments of joy when his son said, "You're still my hero, Daddy," even when there was no meat in the soup. In 10 minutes, Odogwu learned more about fatherhood than in 10 years of investor dinners and charity board meetings. Meanwhile, Ire was busy creating turrets and towers with kids who didn't know who she was and didn't care. To them, she was just a girl with fast hands and funny ideas. They laughed when her sand wall collapsed. She laughed with them. No stage. No judgment. Just play. Odogwu finally walked over and sat cross-legged beside her. He tried to mold a square block of sand but failed miserably. Ire laughed. "Your castle is leaning," she teased. "It has character," he replied. One of the little boys asked, "Are you her uncle?" Before he could answer, Ire said quickly, "He's my dad." The kids nodded without question. To them, love didn't need documentation. They played until the sun climbed higher. As they prepared to leave, Ire stood beside him, dusting sand from her knees. Then she asked, "Why do rich people always build walls?" He looked down at her. The question came so innocently, so purely, yet it sank deep. He sighed. "Because we're afraid of being needed." As they walked back toward the car, a child from the sandbox shouted, "Come back again, Ire." She turned and smiled. Odogwu didn't say a word, but in that moment, he felt the walls around him begin to tremble, just a little. What he didn't know was that someone had followed them. Someone who watched from behind the swings, camera in hand, eyes sharp, waiting for the right moment to expose what didn't belong. The next day, Ire grabbed Odogwu's hand just as he was settling into a virtual meeting interface. "You've seen my world," she said. "But not all of it." He raised an eyebrow. "There's more?" She nodded, grinning. "There's a man I want you to meet. He's very wise. And he gives the best haircuts in Lagos." That's how they ended up in a dusty alley in Mushin, where children raced plastic bottle cars across gutters and wafts of jollof rice mixed with the sting of kerosene. Nestled between a broken-down tailoring shop and a woman selling fried yam was Baba Kenny's barber shop. A wooden plank above the door read "Glory to Glory Sharpening Saloon. No gossip allowed." Inside, the fan creaked rhythmically and the walls were covered in faded photos of men with bold haircuts and bold smiles. The air smelled of pomade and powdery talcum. Ire burst in like a regular. "Baba Kenny," she called. An elderly man with a gray beard and Yoruba newspaper under one arm looked up. "Ah, my princess has come to disgrace my clippers again." He laughed and stood to hug her. Then he saw Odogwu. "Your uncle?" he asked. "My daddy," Ire replied, eyes twinkling. Baba Kenny nodded politely and gestured to the seat. "He needs touching up. His head looks like Ide think too much." Odogwu chuckled. "I suppose I could use a trim." He sat down, slightly uncomfortable in the narrow, cracked leather chair. The mirror was chipped at the edge. The clippers hummed to life with a struggling buzz. "So," Baba Kenny said, combing through Odogwu's silver hair, "how many children you get?" Odogwu hesitated. "Just one now. One is enough if you raise them with both eyes open. Rich or poor, no child wants a shadow for a parent." The words hit harder than the clippers. "You spend time with her?" Baba Kenny continued. "Or you just buy gifts and disappear?" Odogwu looked up at the man in the mirror. Older, worn, unknown. "I'm trying. Try harder," Baba Kenny said. "Children don't remember the gifts. They remember the presents. They remember the laughter, the smell of your shirt, the way you listen when their voice shakes." He said it so casually, yet Odogwu felt something knot in his chest. Halfway through the haircut, the clipper began to slow. Brrrrzzz. Clunk. Silence. Then darkness. And Nipa had struck. The shop went dim. The fan groaned to a stop. Baba Kenny laughed heartily. "Ah, half-head billionaire. You go use cap today." Ire burst out laughing. Odogwu, instead of fuming, looked at his half-faded head in the mirror, and laughed too. It had been years since he laughed like that. "You know," he said, smiling, "maybe I needed this all along." Back at Ire's neighborhood, he looked up at the rooftops of their small community, rusty zinc panels, frayed wires, and plastic water tanks. In the distance, a group of kids chased a balloon that had floated too high. That night, Odogwu called his assistant and gave a single instruction: install solar panels across the entire block. No logos, no credits, no announcement. The next day, power returned to Mushin long before Nipa did. Fridges hummed again. Phones charged. Freezers worked. No one knew who did it. But everyone thanked God anyway. Later that evening, as Toon helped Ire pack her school bag, Odogwu leaned against the doorway watching them. Soft lighting, gentle laughter, the kind of peace you can't engineer. Toon looked up, her tone thoughtful. "She's changing you," she said. He nodded. "She's saving me." Toon put Ire's shoes beside the door, then turned to him, voice low, calm, and steady. "She doesn't need a rich dad." He paused. "She needs a real one." Odogwu stood there, motionless for a moment. Then he looked at Ire, half asleep on the rug, using her backpack as a pillow, and realized. Wealth could buy the lights, but love built the home. The evening began like most others, peaceful, quiet, almost too perfect. The Glass Heights penthouse was awash in dim golden light. Ire sat curled up on the couch with a book while Odogwu stood in his study, talking to his AI assistant. But what Ire didn't know was what she wasn't supposed to hear. Her ears caught fragments as the door remained slightly ajar. "We've crossed the emotional boundary. It may be time to conclude the arrangement. Make preparations to end all scheduled appearances next week." She froze. A cold knot twisted in her stomach. The words repeated in her mind like a siren. Conclude the arrangement. End all appearances. Her world tilted. So it was just pretend. He was leaving. All the laughter. The stories. The jollof on the rooftop. The visit to Baba Kenny. The look he gave her like she mattered. Fake. All of it. She packed slowly that night, without a sound. A school bag half full of essentials, a change of clothes, her toothbrush, and the hand-drawn family portrait she'd folded and refolded 100 times. She left the wardrobe open. Left the lights off. Left one last thing on the dining table. A white paper napkin. Scrawled on it in pencil. "Thank you for pretending. I won't make it harder for you." Ire. The wind in Mushin smelled different at night. Closer, heavier, full of sighs and secrets. Ire walked barefoot until she reached the one place where no one lied. Baba Kenny's barbershop. The lights were out, but she knew the back entrance. He kept an old mat in the corner, near the radio he never turned off. He wasn't surprised when she knocked. He looked at her face, pale and clenched with silence, and simply opened the door wider. "No questions tonight," he said. She nodded. She curled up in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest. Her eyes were open, but her heart was shut. Back at the penthouse, Odogwu walked out of his study humming softly, until he saw the empty couch to Ire. Silence. He checked her room. Empty. Bathroom. Empty. Then the dining table. He saw the napkin. He read it once. Then again. His heart stopped. The man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking suddenly found his legs trembling. For the first time in 2 decades, he panicked. Not because something was gone, but because someone was. Baba Kenny's door creaked open at midnight. He looked up from his stool and nearly dropped his cup. Odogwu stood there. No Agbada. No bodyguards. No car behind him. Just a simple black t-shirt, dark jeans, and a face that looked like it had swallowed grief and refused to spit it out. "She's here," Baba Kenny said softly. "But she hasn't spoken." Odogwu nodded and walked inside. Ire turned toward the sound, ready to retreat, but froze. She didn't recognize him like this. No presence. No power. Just eyes red with worry and hands shaking. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he knelt before her. Gently. Slowly. "No drama. I didn't mean it the way you heard it," he said. "I was trying to protect you. From me. From this uncertain thing we started." She looked down, silent. "You don't need to pay me anymore," he whispered. "Just come home." His voice cracked on the word home. For the first time since the day they met, Ire didn't smile or speak. She simply took his hand, and didn't let go. When they returned, it wasn't to the glass fortress high above Eko Atlantic. It was to Surulere, a quiet cul-de-sac near Ireoluwa, tucked between 2 rows of flowering almond trees and familiar brown rooftops. There, a new house stood. Not tall, not glossy, just real. The gate creaked open as Odogwu led Ire through, her small hand wrapped tightly around his fingers. Inside, the home breathed with comfort. Soft yellow paint, wooden shelves stacked with children's books, walls covered with hand-drawn art. The scent of freshly fried akara wafted from the tiny open kitchen. Ire gasped when she saw the living room. Not because it was grand, but because it was hers. A couch just her size. A corner for puzzles. A mat spread with colorful beads and thread. No screens on the walls. No robotic voices. Just warmth. Toon stepped out from the hallway, apron around her waist, smile soft and cautious. "I thought you'd prefer a mansion," she said. Odogwu shook his head. "I've lived in 10 of those. Never felt this full before." He looked around, not at the things, but at the silence between them. It didn't echo anymore. It embraced. 2 weeks later, Odogwu formally stepped down from the executive board of Crestaverse. In a quiet press statement, he said, "Legacy isn't how far you expand. It's how close you come to the people who need you." The announcement rippled through the tech world, confusing investors and amusing the media. But Odogwu didn't flinch. He spent mornings taking Ire to school. Afternoons in the community library he helped refurbish. Evenings sitting on the floor with Toon and Ire, braiding hair with clumsy fingers, laughing when the lines went crooked. He still wore expensive shoes, but now they carried him through muddy paths without complaint. At school, the fame had dulled but the whispers hadn't. Tega, sensing the tide had turned, made one last attempt to reclaim his throne. During morning assembly, he smirked and shouted from the back row, "So, Ire, when is your rented dad's subscription expiring?" Laughter rippled. Ire clenched her jaw, ready to ignore it, when a deep voice echoed across the assembly. "Never. I bought a lifetime plan." All heads turned. Odogwu stood at the gate, wearing faded jeans and a white t-shirt, written across the chest in big bold lettering. Ire's dad. Even the teachers laughed. The headmistress invited him in. The students clapped. And Tega? He melted into his seat like forgotten homework. That evening, Odogwu sat at his desk in the Surulere home, replying to emails when a new one arrived, marked confidential inquiry. Subject, your story. Hollywood wants it. It was from an American film studio with Nigerian partners. They'd seen the photos, heard the rumors, watched the story unfold across social media. They wanted to adapt it for a film. Not just a documentary. A feature. A story of a girl who borrowed a billionaire and turned him into a father. Odogwu stared at the screen for a long time, then called out, "Ire, would you want the world to know our story?" She looked up from her drawing pad and asked, "Will they believe it?" He smiled faintly. "That's not the question. The question is, will you tell it?" The email came wrapped in prestige. A personal invitation from the Geneva Global Tech Summit, requesting Odogwu Etim-Ade to keynote the event's final night, a moment that would cement his name among the world's most influential digital pioneers. Billionaire founders, heads of state, and media powerhouses would be there. It was more than just an honor. It was the crown jewel he had never worn. His assistant forwarded the itinerary with a note. "You'll be trending globally for weeks. Say yes, and history changes." He was just about to respond when another notification blinked across his calendar. Ireoluwa, Primary 4B School Play, Friday, 3 p.m. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and chuckled softly. History could wait. When the school gates opened on the day of the play, the entire auditorium buzzed with laughter, excited parents, and rustling Ankara wrappers. Children darted between the chairs, holding props and script pages, teachers shouting above the chaos. Backstage, Ire paced nervously in a sky-blue costume she had helped sew with Toon 2 weeks earlier. Her character was a little girl with no family, searching for where she belonged. She peered from behind the curtain and froze. Front row. Odogwu. No security. No laptop. Just him in a simple native shirt, smiling like nothing else in the world mattered. He had said no to Geneva. He had said yes to her. The play began. Children danced, acted, forgot their lines, recovered, and giggled through it all. Then came Ire's scene. She stood alone on the stage, holding a paper bag and a walking stick, pretending to knock on imaginary doors. "Are you my father?" she asked the butcher. "Are you my father?" she asked the tailor. "Are you my father?" she asked the silent street. Laughter gave way to stillness. Then her final monologue began. Her voice trembled, but she never missed a beat. "A real father is not the one you find once. He's the one who finds you every day. Even when you're hiding. Even when you're afraid. Even when you think you're not worth finding." The room was silent. Odogwu's eyes glistened. He blinked slowly, but the tear fell anyway. When the play ended, the crowd exploded into applause. Cameras flashed. Parents rose to their feet. Ire looked out into the sea of hands and eyes. And found one. His. He stood, clapping slowly, then faster. Not for the performance. For her. For her truth. For everything she had taught him. Later, as they walked toward the parking lot under the fading orange sky, Odogwu turned to Toon. She had watched the entire play with silent tears, her pride barely contained. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper, a blueprint. "I want to build something," he said softly. She raised a brow. "Not an app. Not a company. Something real. A community hub. For girls like Ire. For mothers like you. A place for families that need more than money." Toon looked at him, eyes narrowing with cautious hope. He continued, "But I don't want to do it alone." She didn't answer right away. She just stared at him. And for the first time, he was the one waiting to be chosen. The sun beamed gently over Eko Royal Primary's assembly ground, where colorful canopies flapped in the breeze and children danced to drums and whistles. It was Children's Day. And this year, the spotlight didn't belong to a governor's daughter or a celebrity's niece. It belonged to Ireoluwa Etim-Ade. She stepped up to the podium dressed in white and gold Ankara, confidence tucked neatly into her smile. Her braids shimmered with tiny beads, and her voice, though young, rang with a clarity that turned the buzzing crowd still. Her speech was titled, "The Power of Choosing." She began softly. "Some people think family means blood, that love must look like a surname or a photo album. But sometimes, love is what chooses you in your most invisible moment." She paused, scanning the crowd. "I used to sit alone during lunch. I used to wish for someone to claim me, not because I was smart, not because I was sad, just because I was. And then, someone did." Behind her, Toon wiped her eyes quietly, and beside her stood Odogwu, hands folded, trying not to break under the weight of his own joy. "The man who chose me wasn't looking for a daughter, but I was looking for a dad. And somehow, we met halfway, in a world where nothing is guaranteed but everything is possible." A soft breeze rustled her papers. "I want to tell every child here today. You are not too poor to be loved. You are not too quiet to be heard. You are not too broken to be chosen." The applause erupted before she even reached the final line, but she smiled, stepped back, and delivered it anyway. "Love is not just what you receive. It's also what you dare to give. I didn't just get chosen. I chose too." Months had passed since the play. Life didn't become perfect, but it became true. Odogwu and Toon launched Project Lantern, a tech education NGO dedicated to training underprivileged kids in robotics, storytelling, and digital literacy. Their mission? To light up the minds that the world too often ignores. The foundation headquarters were located in Surulere, just 2 streets away from the barbershop that had first heard Ire's silent cry. They funded school libraries, hosted mentorship dinners, built safe spaces for children in broken homes. And Ire? She became its face, not because she was rich, but because she was real. Her classmates, once bullies, Now queued up to join her team. Tega swept the classroom floors during the NGO's first outreach day. Juba handled event flyers. Even Madame Yawande offered to donate the school's abandoned ICT room for use. The story that had once been a secret shame had become a national campaign. Television interviews, radio segments, a billboard in Lekki that read, "Fathers are not found, they are formed, Ireoluwa." One quiet evening, back in the Surulere house, the lights were off. Not from blackout, from choice. They sat in the living room under soft candlelight. Ire, curled on the couch, drawing new logo designs for Project Lantern. Tune hummed softly while folding laundry. Odogwu was bent over the small desk in the corner, reviewing a proposal draft, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. The warmth in the room wasn't from power supply. It was from peace. Ire looked up. She watched him silently for a while, then said, "You chose me first." He turned slowly, surprised, almost unsure she was talking to him, but her gaze was steady. He smiled and stood, walked toward her, crouched beside the couch, and whispered, "No, you chose me too. Did this story touch your heart the way it touched ours? Then don't just leave, belong. Hit that subscribe button, like, and share this story with someone who still believes in second chances. And in the comments, tell us who chose you, or who you chose. More powerful stories are coming, and you don't want to miss a single one.